Manager at Local Motors Hackerspace LM Labs. So.
Yeah. You also spoke at Vegas.js a little while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, it's
I remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about
QueensJS.
Yeah, I'm Chad Tech. I work for a company that's also called Chad Tech. Just a coincidence. And I'm going to talk about something I made a while ago called CtPaint. By the way, feel free to interrupt me because I like talking to you guys. I like having like a conversation with you guys. Also, I write in CoffeeScripts. If you don't like the syntax of what I'm going to show you guys, or if you don't understand it, like feel free to ask me what it's saying. I'm going to go over that. And also, just if you want to say anything, actually, you can interrupt me with anything. Actually,
Except Will.
CtPaint is it's an image editor that I made. Well, I guess I grew up doing dumb pixel art and like video game sprite stuff and reading like when I was like 10 I read all those like web comics that use Mega Man sprites. So like MS Paint was kind of like a part of my world, and as I got older I was still doing pixel stuff. I started using like a Mac computer. But there wasn't anything like MS Paint, and I started looking into it. I couldn't find anything. This is right about the time I was getting into JavaScript, so I wanted to look into making my own, and that's what CtPaint is. CtPaint is basically a clone of MS Paint in the web browser. It's got, you can zoom in. It starts off with this little instruction, just because I want people to know where they get docs. But you could select stuff, you could draw stuff. Zoom in. You can change color too. It's got different colors in it. It's got a fill tool. Yeah, it's got. I just kind of thought like, oh, what does MS Paint have, and what were the limitations of MS Paint? And that was kind of my guide when making this. Yes, you can select stuff, and you can invert it, and you can hold it down, and it'll do that. That epilepsy thing. But yeah, that was what I made, and then that kind of became my default tool whenever I do pixel art stuff. Oh yeah, you can open images too in CtPaint. So if you drag and drop anything onto the canvas, it'll show up in there.
That's really good.
Thanks. Yeah, and then don't worry, I've got. But yeah, that's kind of that's what I put together. I used Gulp and jQuery. I don't think that was necessary. So preparing for this talk, I had to look at really old code, and it was really embarrassing. So I did a little bit of like rewriting it to make it more readable and not have like variable names over 50 characters long.
Can you tell us about some of the other stuff that's in the toolbar? Because I don't really remember that many things that were in MS Paint. So, especially like the two on the bottom.
Yeah, sure. This was like, making these was a really fun design exercise. Thanks for mentioning that. Because I drew the buttons, and I had to think about like, well, what should the buttons look like? What represents the thing that it's going to do? And in MS Paint, like the pencil tool is a pencil, like it puts dots, and I'm like, the challenge I put on myself is thinking like, well, I don't want to make any more analogies to the real world. I just want to make it like an analogy to itself. I think that was kind of a mistake. So a lot of the stuff is fun because you get to learn why you shouldn't do it. But so like the pencil tool isn't a pencil; it's a point. But anyway, about some of the specific tools, like this one's rotate. I should zoom out. Yeah, so if I select an area and then do, I think it's R, yeah. Or if I hit that button and then 9, it'll rotate that.
Keyboard shortcut.
Yeah, they're even shorter than what they normally are because you don't have to do command.
Are they in the CT button in the corner? The keyboard shortcuts?
Yeah, it's in all the docs. But yeah, then there's I think we already did invert. Oh, it's a little buggy because it didn't make it very good. But there's undo and redo, and then the two bottom ones you asked about is like some tools have like properties or magnitudes, like you can make the line bigger and smaller. And I didn't know, that was actually a really tough one to represent, and I think I kind of made a compromise with myself. I used the phi symbol, I think it's, or the psi, that they use in formal logic to represent a property. It's totally not clear at all, but that's what I used. I used phi negative and phi positive to represent increase and decrease. Yeah, that's what that is. And there's also a switch that will switch between like so the circle, you could switch between filled and not filled with the circle.
What are you drawing?
A canvas element. So that was what I used. This was an interesting thing for me working on this project. Is at the time I started working on it, which I think was like October 2014 or 13. I forget which one of those. You couldn't turn off anti-aliasing on canvas elements, at least not universally. It was like you could do it a different way in every browser. But when I decided to start working on this in October, which meant researching whether it is possible to do it. And then I found out that the people at Chrome, a guy named Jack Hugh or Ho, he was working on this while right when I started adding pixelation. So like I was working on it, and I kept I was paying attention to the Google groups, like, hey, like this is gonna work, right? Like I know. But I'm totally thankful to him for working on it. So like right when they finished that, right when they implemented that into Chrome, I finished my thing, and it just came together perfectly.
How did you do alias text? Please tell me the secret.
Anti-alias text or?
No, like jagged little text.
Oh yeah. Well, so it starts off with just an image, and so I had that image, as it will stick it in there.
Okay.
But was there something? I have a font that I use, and I think you can turn off. You've been able to turn off anti-aliasing on fonts for a while, I think, or at least a different way. Does it? Oh, it doesn't?
Not for me.
Is there a text tool here?
No, there isn't. That's one feature I didn't include. Oh, I know. Well, I think I don't use any fonts in this. I use fonts now. That was why I was thinking about it. But I actually have an image for each character.
Oh, that's
and
dope.
these are all canvases. Everything on here is a canvas, and so it gets drawn on.
Are they individual canvases, or is it one big one?
There are a handful of canvases. There's a canvas that's just the background to make sure it's always gray. There's the image you're drawing. That's another canvas. Each toolbar is a canvas, a different one. And then I think whenever a menu pops up, like if I want to change this color, this purple, a different canvas shows up. So otherwise, it's just down here. It's just off the screen. Yeah.
Can you save stuff? And if so, does it get saved as bitmap images?
Yeah, you can save stuff, and it was great because I didn't have to do any code to do that. If you just right-click on a canvas element. Yeah, it'll save it as a PNG, and I've never tried to save it as anything else. I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How big is the undo? Is it the full thing?
I did. I think I limited it to 10. It's so the way maybe I could look in. We could look at some code. The way undo works is there's an array called canvas history, and every time you operate a tool, it takes the canvas and it throws it at the end of that array, and it gets rid of the first one. So it's constantly going back. So when you hit Z, it just grabs the old one and it puts it on the canvas. And then there's another array called canvas futures for redo. So when you start undoing it, it takes the one that it took out and puts it in the redo. And so if you don't do anything before you redo, it'll just grab that one. Otherwise, it'll empty out the redo array. Yeah.
While developing, did you use any profiling tools?
What is a profiling tool?
Like something that you could use to figure out what's hurting your performance, or
How often are you redrawing the canvas? That might speak to your question.
Yeah, you're redrawing the canvas with every operation. Well, it works good enough if you're using just like if your canvas is about like 500 by 500 pixels, and you're doing pixel art where you're like only manipulating a tiny portion at a time, it's fine. That's been my experience. If I were to open up like a really big image, like a real photograph, it probably wouldn't work very well. It'd get really laggy. So I think there's you could definitely make it more performant, and I'm kind of interested in doing that now, and I think I might get back into this project. I think it could be a lot more performant than how it is. I didn't know all the canvas tricks when I started working on this, and there are like a ton of them that would definitely improve it. But yeah, updating the canvas was interesting. Like I remember when I was working on it, I used the point tool, and you know when the user operates the pencil tool, they want to see like a curve that follows their mouse. But if you're updating it at like a frame rate or something, it's just going to put a dot every so many seconds, and you won't get a curve. So I had to when I figured out that problem, I realized that the point tool is actually just a line tool. That's every time you update it, it's checking where it was and where it now is, and then it draws a line from that distance. And often the distance is only 5 by 6 pixels, so it looks like a curve over small distances. Yeah.
2 questions. One, what's that code look like? And 2, what font is that?
Well, this is my font, and this is my color scheme, which is actually the color scheme in CtPaint too. But what? So I made this. It's funny for me making this because I made this one way, and then I got into like React and like common libraries, and I learned a completely different way of making code. The way I made this resembles quite a lot more like how I presume like C or C# programmers are coding, or not C#, C++. My gulp file. I don't have my gulp file in here. Yeah, my gulp file is. It's just a lot of concatenation of so it's just the output of my gulp file is it's concatenation. So it just takes all the text files and puts them together, and the output is about 4,000 lines of code, but each one is only like 50 or so. So it really is like just a bunch of header files, just like in a C++ project, and then there's a small loop for the operation, which is like only one file. I called it main act. I'd probably call it main now. But yeah, main act just has a bunch of event listeners. It's like there's a mouse down event. When mouse down happens, when the mouse click goes down, something has to happen. Which of the things should happen? And I used the term posture. I don't know if that's a good term, but I used the term posture that corresponded to each tool. So each tool had a posture, and the posture was an array of things like what happens when you have this tool, when you're using like the point tool or the sample tool, and the mouse goes down, what should you do? When it comes up, what should you do? When it moves around, what do you need to do? And so it swapped out that variable in the event listener for all those different tools and all those different possible states of the application. So here's an example of, I thought I had sample posture. So here's an example of the posture. Yeah, just an array of functions. What happens when the mouse moves? Oh yeah, I had one feature I implemented was, if you notice, wherever the cursor is, there's a dot. The way it does that is it figures out where's the mouse, put a red dot there. If you move, erase that red dot and put a red dot where it was. So it's always remembering what color it covered up, and it's always remembering to draw it. So one of the bugs is somewhere in the combination of state properties, it might miss it, and you might get a red dot in there by accident. But that was something I had to worry about in the posture of these tools. Is like when the mouse is moving, the first thing you do is cover up the old one. Then you draw whatever. Then you save where the mouse now is. Then you update the cursor. All that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? So,
do you have any examples of what you made with this?
Yeah, I do.
Show us your pixel art.
Well, I started drawing the buttons. At some point in developing this, I was able to draw the buttons.
So you made the buttons for the app before the app was done.
Yeah, it became usable at some point. Yeah, I just looked this up today. I guess I was drawing Pikachu around the same time I was working on the project. Yeah, different animations for the tool. Like when you zoom in, I was trying to. Zoom was a challenge. How do you represent zoom? This was my first idea. Is like you draw. It's the buttons of mountain, and when you zoom in, the square gets smaller. I settled on this one though, don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Here's something else I've drawn. Pixar stuff. Here's like the sprite of the color palette. So yeah, it has this this color palette, and then when the app's running, it fills in each square with the color in that spot in the array. How am I doing on time, by the way? Am I good? Yeah. So I think that's CtPaint. Yeah.
Can you mention deleted scenes real quick? Because I remember this and it was awesome.
Oh.
I like how you named it that.
Yeah. Oh, here's deleted scenes.
Yeah.
I think this is because these were just some of my assets that I had while I was working on it. Oh, I don't have. Oh shoot. Anyway. Anyway, I guess I'll call it. Yeah, I've been able to meet a few of you guys, and it's been great. I'm actually pretty new to the city. If you want to talk to me more about this, I'll be hanging around well after the event. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm @TheRealChadTech. I'm not ChadTech. That's another person. But yeah, thanks a bunch.